Hello guys and welcome back to the Submission Addiction. In today's video I will be giving my predictions on the UFC 316 main card only because I don't have a lot of time at the moment. I'm studying for my finals in school, so this will be a somewhat short video. Let's just start it off with the first fight of the main card. We have Vicente Luque going up against Kevin Holland. Betting wise, this is a terrible matchup. Kevin Holland, you never know how he shows up. Sometimes he shows up, looks great, looks like he should have a number next to his name. Sometimes he shows up and just gets dominated, which has been most of what his career is made of these days. Vicente Luque, he had somewhat of a run in 2019, I believe, but since 2021 he has declined, I believe. However, I will say that Kevin Holland at welterweight shows that he is usually more, if you ask me, more focused on his fight. He actually cares to cut weight instead of when he fights at middleweight, where he's like, nah, fuck, I don't want to cut weight because that's hard, that's tough. So I do think that we will see a slightly better version of Kevin Holland in this fight than if he were supposed to fight at middleweight. He won last time in his last outing against Gunnar Nelson. Decent win, nothing to complain about there. But Gunnar Nelson, great wrestling. He took him down a couple of times. If Vicente Luque can do that against Holland, he could get the submission. Holland has decent jiu-jitsu, mostly offensive jiu-jitsu. I think he actually has a nice jiu-jitsu game. But he got subbed against Rainier the Ritter last time he lost, so Luque could sub him. However, I'm predicting a Kevin Holland win by decision probably, but they are both declining, if you ask me, and I wouldn't bet on this fight. The money value is on Luque in this fight, but I wouldn't care to bet. Alright, Mario Bautista against the debuting Patchy Mix. Patchy Mix, he's one of these guys, he's a somewhat well-known name, even though he's not in the UFC, because he is a champion in another promotion, in another big promotion. And it's exciting with these guys coming over to the UFC, but I do believe that we often see these guys, not performing that well. Michael Chandler, he knocked out Dan Hooker in his debut, but since then, I believe he's like 2-5 in the UFC. Rainier the Ritter is actually doing pretty good. He has 3 wins, 3 finishes, but even though he has 3 wins and 3 submissions, he really seriously struggled against Gerald Meerschaert. And Gerald Meerschaert is a decent fighter, but Mario Bautista is above Gerald Meerschaert. Patricio Pitbull, I get that he was 37 years old, which Patchy Mix is not. But Pitbull didn't do that great either, and I just have a hard time see how Patchy Mix is gonna end up in the top 10 in the UFC so quick. He is 31, 32, I believe, so he could be in his prime and do good. But Mario Bautista, great cardio, great wrestling. I hope Bautista loses because he absolutely you know, he had such a boring fight with Aldo, and people hate him for that, which is somewhat fair, I believe, because he got the win against Aldo by simply by only holding him up against the cage. He couldn't get the takedown, but you know, Aldo has the best takedown defense in UFC history, in my opinion. I do believe Mario Bautista will get the decision win here pretty boringly. You know, in a boring fashion. Yeah, let's just move on to Kelvin Gastelum going up against Joe Pyfer in a much more exciting fight, if you ask me. Kelvin Gastelum, he had a war against Adesanya in, I believe, 2019, 2018, thereabout. But since then, he has just looked like shit in a lot of his fights. You know, he doesn't... That win for Adesanya really has aged poorly, because Kelvin Gastelum is not that great of a fighter. People always talk about his wrestling and his boxing and his durability, and yes, he is durable, but skill-wise, he's nothing to praise that much. Joe Pyfer, he schooled Jack Hermansson for 2 rounds and then lost the last 3 against Jack Hermansson, which I think is a good lesson for him to learn, that you can't just rely on putting everyone away. You know what? I think he's going in this fight improved. He's a lot taller than Kelvin. He has 3.5 inches more reach than him. And I think he'll put Gastelum out in the second round. I think, you know, Kelvin Gastelum has taken a lot of damage in his fights. He has 9 losses. Joe Pyfer, he hits like a truck. I will say I will say he's the first one to put Gastelum away. In the second round. Women's bantamweight championship bout. Juliana Pena, the defending reigning champion of the world, going up against Kayla Harrison, the contender. This is a weird fight. You know, Kayla Harrison, she's minus 625 favorite, which I really don't get. I get that she's the favorite, she is the safe choice, but Juliana Pena really could go out there and win this fight, which is just an embarrassing thing to say, really, because Juliana Pena, she has a decent ground game, but her striking is so unnatural. She's so untalented in the striking department. She looks like someone who was just coming out of, you know, a month Muay Thai class or something, and really don't have an idea what they're doing. Kayla Harrison, not that great of a striker either, but I will say she's a more dominant grappler, probably less technical in some areas, but a more dominant grappler. You know, just look at her. She's so physical. Her physical attributes is out of this world. She's so strong, probably on the sauce as well. She's a bit taller, has less reach, but has definitely more power. I could see Juliana Pena actually, you know, ride the storm off in the first 2 rounds, and then go on to win the last 3 rounds. But so that could happen. But I am banking on Kayla Harrison to go out there and win the first 3 rounds at least, and then be able to hold on for the last 2 rounds to get a 48-47 decision. It could go the other way. Juliana Pena could win the last 3 rounds. Pena could actually if you ask me, go out there and maybe even get a TKO against someone like Kayla Harrison, who doesn't have that cardio. Whereas Juliana Pena has 5-round UFC championship cardio. I'm going to say Kayla Harrison, but really don't put money on her. If you're gonna bet, put your money on Juliana Pena. She's much more value in this one. Alright, the last fight, the main event of the evening. Merab, the Machine Dvalishvili, the defending champion, he is defending his status as the UFC bantamweight GOAT against Sean O'Malley, Sugar Sean O'Malley, who he won the title against. Sean O'Malley has done absolutely fuck all to deserve this rematch, but let's forget that in this breakdown. We can't do anything about it now. The fight is happening. Sean O'Malley, as much as this fight is undeserved, he is getting the fight. So let's just talk about it. This fight will probably play out the way it did the first time. Or it could go how I thought it would in the first fight. Sean O'Malley finds the knockout shot in the first or second round. I think that there's a better likelihood for Merab to go out there and do what he does best, wrestles him and just overwhelms O'Malley with alien-like cardio for 5 rounds. But if you actually go back and watch the first fight and see the 5th round, O'Malley is winning the 5th round. He's not that tired, whereas Merab is actually showing signs of slowing down. My brain says that Merab will win this fight dominantly, even more dominant than the first one. But you know what? Sean O'Malley, I really like his fighting style. He did, even though he lost the first fight, he did somewhat well, if you ask me. He's quit smoking, he's quit social media. He could be more focused in this fight and in this training camp. I gotta pick an underdog here. Even though my brain says that Merab will win in an even more dominant fashion than last time. But you know what? Sometimes you gotta pick the underdog. And I'm picking Sean O'Malley to find the knockout shot in the 3rd round. His Merab on his way in, Sean O'Malley will counter with the right hand, just like he did against Aljo. I could definitely see that. Merab, let's not forget, Merab is like 34 years old, and none except for Volkanovski in the lighter weight classes has won a championship fight from the age 35 and above. Merab is actually getting up there in age, whereas Sean O'Malley, I believe, is only 30, maybe 31, pushing it. Merab looked absolutely at his best last time, but I am going to pick Sean O'Malley in this one. Thank you guys for listening to me. This was my predictions for UFC 316, so let's just go through them quickly. Sketchy fight. I have Holland by decision. I'm picking Mario Bautista in a close fight. Middleweight bout, I'm picking Joe Pyfer by knockout in the 2nd round. Juliana Pena Harrison, I'm picking Harrison by a close decision. And this one, I'm picking Sean O'Malley to find the knockout in the 3rd round. Alright. Remember to subscribe to the Submission Addiction and to leave a like or comment.